Hi, I'm Cheyenne Dirksen-Schroeder, and I'm the managing editor of the Hutchinson News. Here at the News, we are doing interviews with the City Council candidates here in Hutch. So here today, I've got Jade. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're running for, your current role on City Council?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Jade Piros de Carvalho. I'm running in the Northeast District, and I've had the great honor of serving on council since 2013.
Okay, excellent. At a previous City Council forum, we talked a little bit about the Trades Board, which addresses regulation. Could you tell us a little bit about that particular board, what it's called, what it does, and its role with the council?
Sure, yeah. The Building Trades Board was in response to a task force that I convened, I want to say about 2 years ago, to take a look at the regulatory environment in Hutchinson and what we could do on either the zoning or code side to try to spur additional investment. I had received feedback from several constituents that it was difficult to start a business in Hutchinson. There are too many hurdles, and I've never started a business, so I wasn't sure what those challenges were, and we wanted to get to just a deeper understanding of that. So we recruited a group of mostly tradespeople, plumber, architect, electricians, contractors, and a few at-large people and business people to come together and start learning about some of the problems they've heard about in the past and maybe some of the regulations we had in Hutchinson that were further reaching than in other communities they had worked in. So we came up with a list of recommendations, and one of the recommendations we had was to continually take a look at our codes. Codes have a way of just starting to stack on one another over time. We vote them in with the best of intentions, but over time there's just a lot, and you don't ever really go back and look at everything you've done and take a tough look at them and question whether you still need to have them. So one of the charges of this board will be to continually review codes, and when new codes come up, as they do every 3 years, they need to comb through those and say, well, this needs to be stricken, this needs to be taken out, this doesn't apply to our community. So the idea is that we come out with a regulatory environment that is more right-sized for Hutchinson. So something that might be good for Overland Park might not make sense in Hutchinson. Now, we actually did have something called a Board of Appeals in our code. It was just non-functional. So in order to continue this work, we revamped that Board of Appeals into a Board of Trades. They meet monthly, and they hear things, they do a couple things. They go through the codes, like we're talking about. They bring up any kind of problematic codes that they may have heard of through their dealings with other business people. And they also hear appeals of the inspectors, our building officials. I guess if he makes a decision on something, that's the board that they would appeal to. So I hope that covers it. Well, I'm so glad you asked that because nobody really knew about it. And I think it's because it's such a new board and it's not very well formed yet. So we have everybody on it. We've appointed everybody to it, but it doesn't have the structure that our other city boards do in the sense that it doesn't have a chairperson, a vice chair, a secretary, and the agenda isn't necessarily put on the website. And those are all things I think that need to happen for there to be greater transparency in the community about the opportunity to come before this board with your appeals or with your ideas for code revisions. So,
sure. When was the board formed? Do you remember?
It would have been about, I want to say 6 months, but it was earlier this year.
Okay, so it's a very young board.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they probably haven't had a ton of time to achieve anything.
No, I know that they did hear an appeal on a downtown business who was, that was required to put in a fire suppression system.
Okay.
Wanted to have a, they wanted to have, oh goodness, a variance to that. So that is working through that process. They've also looked through, I think, the 2018 International Code to come up with recommendations about what we should not include if we are to accept or adopt that code into the city. So those are the two things, and be happy to talk to anybody about it or give you the names of the people who are on that board. John Richardson, who is also on our planning commission, is on that board as one of the general contractors, and so he's very passionate about it, and could tell you more about their work.
Sure. The news sent out a questionnaire to city council candidates, and one of those questions, we talked a little bit about management operations of the city, and on it you mentioned something we're already kind of hinting at now about transparency and informing residents about city issues when it comes to things like regulation. Many agree that this needs to change, and then we were unaware that something was already going on. Tell me a little bit about improving that dissemination of information to the city.
Yes. Well, you know, that has been a common complaint the entire time I've been on council, and I've bemoaned the fact that we didn't have a communications officer, because that's so critical. You know, you look at the school districts, they each have one, and every city, you know, of the first class that I know of in Kansas has one, and so that was really the first step. And we hired a communications officer a few months ago. She recently returned from maternity leave last week, and she has been great at helping us overcome those hurdles to education and communication. Before we had her, we weren't getting things out on our Facebook page like we needed to. We weren't sending emails out to people affected by road closures or et cetera. I really see her as being the real driving force behind that communication. And also I think, you know, the council needs to probably up our game as far as when there's board openings. We have, I would say, 12 to 15 boards in the city, from planning to zoo to tree board, human relations, et cetera. When those openings arise, we need to be getting that information out there and doing what we can to facilitate engagement of a more diverse audience and more people getting involved in leadership at the city. So, yeah, we haven't, I'm not going to sit here and say we've done a great job, because I don't think we have, but I definitely think we've taken major steps in the last few months to remedy that, and to try to keep people better informed.
Okay, excellent. And also on that questionnaire, you mentioned an area that the city should focus more efforts on as being job creation efforts, as being our community's greatest need. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'm actually really excited about some of the things we're looking at in the job creation sphere. Traditionally, we've done very, traditional economic development as recruitment of industry, and to some extent retention of what we have, and that is championed by the chamber. We allocate about $210,000 a year to them for job creation efforts. But in this last budget, we started something called the Entrepreneurship Navigator, and we're funding that position with the Community Foundation and the college through the Quest Center. And the idea is, instead of just relying on recruitment of businesses here, which every other community is trying to recruit businesses, and you're always going to be competing, why don't we try to grow our own, and let's see what that looks like. And you know, it's really a leap of faith, because we had a very tight budget, and here we are saying we're going to go out on a limb and put $35,000 to fund a new position to try to see if this is going to work. So really excited about that. I'm still a big proponent of traditional economic development, and feel like if we need to come up with unique incentives to make job projects work, I'm behind that. It's not the most fun thing to do. It's not universally loved, but it's what we need to do to stay in the game. And so I'm a firm believer that a lot of our challenges in this community could be made better with more primary jobs, more living wage jobs that offered benefits.
Sure. Is Hutchinson in a position to make a gamble like that on a leap in a new area like that?
Well, I think we are, if we find the right person.
Okay.
You know, if this is all going to boil down to having the right person there to walk people through the startup of your business. You've got to have a really dynamic, charismatic person. I think, I think there's a lot of energy behind this and a lot of collaboration when you see that the community foundation's involved and the college is involved, and that's really what this community needs, is more of everybody working together. And not just on that issue, but there's a lot of collaboration I'm seeing surrounding the deeper challenges of this community, like poverty alleviation, childhood trauma, drug abuse, and mental health. I'm seeing like Resiliency Reno County and the Poverty Collaborative and the Drug Task Force and the Mental Health Task Force all working together on these things. And so there's all this energy building in this community of, let's work together. And I think that's why this is such an exciting time to be involved in local government and to be on the council, because we've had some challenges in the last few years, but there's a lot of positive things going on. So
okay. So you've been on council for a little while. Why stay? Why continue?
Well, I think precisely what I just mentioned. There's so many things that I've kind of had a hand in. Like, for instance, the Drug Task Force I started in 2015. I really see that work is really picking up steam. We've been working with a consultant on a strategic plan for addressing opioid addiction in Reno County through a grant received through the Health Foundation. So that's really exciting to see that work really paying off, and nothing happens overnight. We've done a lot with housing, from demoing abandoned buildings and changing that policy, so we're really attacking those blighted areas of neighborhoods. Neighborhood development. We started neighborhood development with Southwest Bricktown, moved over to College Grove, and now we're up in Farmington, and the energy around that. And all of those efforts, I just want to see continue, because they're not done. You can't do anything in a year or two, and I'm excited about those efforts, and I want to be a part of seeing them continue.
Okay. Tell me about an aspect of you or your past history that isn't typical of a public servant, but will assist you on the city council.
Okay. Well, I think I grew up here in Hutchinson. I was born and raised here in Hutchinson, and I have a great life. And I think I have a great life because this community believes in investing in people. I grew up with very few resources on the south end of town, and just if you were to look at where I came from, I don't think you would have ever given me a second glance as someone who would have the life I have today, with a beautiful daughter and a wonderful husband, and a nice home and a great career. And I know at my soul that is not just because I pulled myself up from my bootstraps and I worked really hard. It's because people believed in me, and I was afforded opportunities in this community through all of the public resources. So we have great parks. I never knew that. I never felt like I didn't have what other kids had because I didn't go on fancy vacations, because Cary Park is like magical to me. The public library was amazing. My schools, I always felt like I had the best teachers and just great experiences, and just so much about this community is about lifting up everyone. And so I think coming from that and getting to where I am now, not everybody has that experience and that recognition that, you need to look out for everybody, because everybody's an investment. We're all created with unique abilities, but we have to be given the same opportunities to succeed, or we're not going to be able to, exercise those God-given talents. And so I guess that might make me unique in some sense from some elected officials.
Okay. Now today, if you go to the south side, Hutchinson, it may look similar to what it looked like when you grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And the people living there, not everyone will have a success story.
Yeah.
Is the city doing enough to contribute to those success stories?
That's a really good question. And I think the answer to that is, maybe we're not, but I think I know the answer, and I think that's doubling down on our neighborhood development efforts. Because what we're doing in neighborhoods is empowering people who don't understand that government works for them. We're helping them learn to advocate for themselves and teaching them, like, if you work together and tell us what you need, we're in a better position to be able to support you and provide it. And so I really think we need to be doubling down on our neighborhood development efforts. I also think what we just did with rental licensing, we actually haven't voted that into effect, but it's very controversial, but I think it absolutely impacts the people we're talking about, and we have a moral and ethical obligation as community leaders to protect the health and safety of tenants, especially in marginalized parts of our town or low resource parts of our town, and because a lot of them aren't yet educated in how to advocate for themselves and are too scared to stand up for their own rights. So those are the things I think we could be doing better and that we have already started doing and just need to continue doing.
Sure. When faced with cutting vital services or raising taxes, how do you respond?
Well, our taxes are fairly significant here in Hutchinson and Reno County. So I'm always loath to say, well, let's just raise taxes and bring more services. But when it comes to vital services, if we're talking about police, fire, infrastructure, and even to a certain extent like public parks and facilities where everybody has the access to and has the opportunity to utilize, I am not opposed to slight increases, but I want it to be the last thing we look at, because what I've found in my business life is there's a lot of times I work for an internet service provider and we do custom builds. So if somebody wants us to come to their business, they'll say, oh, I really want your service. We'll run a business case, we'll look at it, and we'll be like, oh my goodness, it's gonna cost us $50,000 to get there. Well, they just pass out and they're like, that's not gonna happen. But what my boss is always challenging me to do is say, no, go back, figure it out, get it down to 15 or whatever they can pay. Try not to let the deal die. And so that's the eye I've tried to take to our budget. And raising taxes is always an easy out. It's always going to be an option. But what can we do on the creative side to get costs down without compromising services? Nobody wants to, people complain about our taxes, which I understand. My taxes are high as well. But I also hear complaints about, you're not fixing that pothole, and I want my snow cleared off my residential road, not just the arterial roads. And so all of those resources and services, they cost money. So you can't have it both ways. I think we always need to have a very conservative approach to the mill levy and try to keep it as steady as possible. But I'm also not going to take care of our first responders if we need to provide them health insurance and it went up 15%. You know what I mean? So it's so easy to just say, no, I would never raise taxes. But I'm going to be completely honest and authentic in any interaction. And so yeah, if it came down to it, if it came down to taking care of basic needs, then that's always an option.
Okay. Those are my main questions. Is there another topic we haven't covered that you'd like to go into?
Well, we could wax philosophical forever because I love city government. I guess I would just say that, as an incumbent, you're kind of on the defensive and you're kind of, which, I think having more people involved in this election process is actually a really good thing for the democratic process and for all the voters. It really makes you get crystal clear about why you want to serve and also justify your votes. But it also leads to a lot of kind of doomsday talk and, oh, everything's terrible. And I don't think everything's terrible in Hutchinson. I was just at a conference over the weekend with elected officials all across Kansas. And every single community, even Overland Park, has a lot of the same challenges that we have. And I spoke with people from McPherson and Salina and Wichita and Lindsborg and Wamego and Dodge City, and they all have these same challenges around their stormwater utilities and their rental and their housing stock and their mill levy. And So I think it's easy to look at your community and forget all of the great things happening. And I think there is a lot of good energy around neighborhood development, around placemaking, around arts and cultural activities and family-friendly events. And I just feel this swell of good things happening, all this momentum, and we're almost to this tipping point, and I think we need to focus on that. And you know, it's been mentioned that we need to change the narrative. Every community struggles with this, but you know, be proud to be from Hutchinson, and if you see something that you don't like about it, be willing to step up and put in the work to make it better. I love this community, and I love public service. I love all that Hutchinson has given me, and it's really just my goal through public service to try to make sure that everybody in this town has the same opportunities to succeed that I did.
Well, hey, thank you so much for speaking with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me over. We made it through.